Welcome to another episode of Living the Journey. I'm Jennifer Harris.
I'm CJ Sanchez.
And we're continuing the theme of health and wellness this new year.
Absolutely.
We're joined by Miss Emily, which, funny story, I actually have a full-on relationship with Miss Emily Joy Wellness as I know her on Instagram, but this is our first time meeting, like in person.
And she's just as nice in person.
Aw, thank you. So I wanted to let you introduce yourself. Like I said, we're talking about health and wellness, and Emily is a practitioner, and I'll let her explain exactly what she does and tell us what you're interested in and who you are and all that good stuff.
Sure. So my name is Emily. I'm a certified transformational nutrition coach, and my passion is really women's health and women's wellness because that's like my personal journey, what I kind of struggled with, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm just very passionate about balancing all aspects of your life and not going, overboard in one way or another. So, I think that's what we're going to talk about.
Well, yeah, you mentioned something really important to me. It's something that I'm practicing now, and I haven't always been this way, but that's balance.
Yes.
So
that's the biggest struggle for most people is what I find is finding that balance.
Mm-hmm. So what is tell us about your personal journey, because, and I know that specifically you deal with women's hormones, so is there a special story or a journey that you've gone through that led you to where you are now?
Yeah, kind of. So I always grew up very healthy, like my parents just raised me very healthy. I grew up on a little farm, we always had a garden, and I just always ate very healthy. So, once I started driving and everything and I had more freedom, I kind of went off the rails a little bit. I want to eat this, I want to eat this, I'm going to go get Whataburger. I would sneak Oreos into my room, and it was just like...
the rebel stuff.
Yes, the rebel stuff, and it wasn't even that bad, but it was it felt rebellious to me. But yeah, so I started eating much, and it wasn't even bad, but it was much worse than
what you were used to. Yeah. Your body was probably freaking out.
Yeah, and I used to. We're going to talk about periods here. I'm sorry.
But
there's something I want to add. We'll get to it.
I'm going to chime in eventually.
Okay. But yeah, I used to get periods where I wouldn't even notice them. I wouldn't even realize they were coming. They were painless, and all my friends were like, "What do you do? How do you do this?" And I'm like, I don't know.
Same.
Yes.
Until. I will tell you my until story.
Yes, until.
Sorry, guys.
1 or 2 years after I, started eating worse than I was normally eating. And at the time, I didn't really connect it to how I was eating. Mm-hmm. But I was just like, what is happening? Because it was getting so painful. The PMS was terrible. I would be in bed for 12 hours. I couldn't move. I was throwing up. Just terrible pain. And I'm like, what happened? What made this change? And I finally, started to go back to my roots, I guess. Yeah. And I started to learn a little bit more about hormones because, like I said, I always knew a bunch of different health stuff just from my parents and my mom. Yeah. But I started to research and get into it, and I was like, this is super interesting, and not enough women know about this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why is this not more mainstream? All this stuff. You shouldn't have to deal with that pain.
Right.
You shouldn't have to drive your period. You shouldn't have to try and schedule things around it. So I just kind of researched and tried literally everything under the sun to heal myself. It's still not perfect, but it is so much better, and I'm still learning every single month, and I think that's really cool. But yeah, that's kind of where I went into that, and so I probably spent 2 years just working on myself, and then I was like, you know what, I really want to help other women figure out how to do this.
I think that's really cool to kind of look at from that perspective, because every time that you're wanting to help others, you have to help yourself first.
Yeah.
And so that you going through that journey of realizing that there was something that you could, why is this the way it is? How do I change that for me so that I can help another group of women or a bigger audience be feel better?
Yeah.
You know, kind of inspire that
Yeah,
idea
it is
of wellness,
truly like my favorite thing, just to like not even when women are even like working with me or paying me, but just to like share, you know. That's why I like love going on Instagram, because I like really just want everyone to know about it.
That's why I think you and I connect so well, because we're both just so passionate about our. It's really because I'm going through my own healing journey in the food world, and so I think that is what draws me to you. Is what I'm like. I want to know more about Emily Joy Wellness because you're very magnetic in the sense of like you know what you're talking about, you're passionate about it, and you're truly just helping people. It's free information.
Yes, those are my favorite people to follow, like the free information.
Yeah, because you know it's coming from a space of a genuine space of good intentions. So you biohack your period a lot, and if no one knows what that means or don't know what biohacking means, do you know what biohacking?
I don't. So.
Why don't you tell us what biohacking is?
I actually might not be the best
just
informer of that particular term, but I guess it's kind of just what you mentioned before, like using yourself as your own guinea pig, you know, and like trying to hack your body to make it better.
Using supplements
and supplements, using lifestyle, using workouts, using anything really that makes you feel.
I feel like that can almost be attributed back to like maybe like not the period aspect of things, but just like hacking your body, like an athletic, like some an athlete. You know, they have to live a certain life. They eat certain foods to perform certain ways.
I feel like that's
the
like
body,
the traditional,
right? And the original. The female body is very unique, and compared to the male body, like you guys have that cycle monthly.
So
right?
actually, what I've been really getting into in the past year is cycle syncing. I don't know if you've heard me talk about that.
I think that's what I mean when I say the biohacking. I'm talking about that stuff that I've seen on your Instagram with like, okay, if you're feeling this symptom or you're about to start your period, take this supplement.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
So cycle syncing is something that I've really been using, I guess, really to biohack myself in the past like 8 months. And honestly, I really attribute that to how well my period has been, how well my hormones have been this year. But what it really is so women go through 4 phases throughout the month. Men's cycle, it's a 24-hour cycle. You run on the same cycle every single day, which is why men are so good at routine.
Did you know that?
You wake up, you wake up, obviously, you know your testosterone's the highest in the morning. That's the best time for you to work out. You automatically know that, and you go throughout your day, and your cortisol drops throughout the day, and your circadian rhythm is just on a 24-hour cycle. And so, like, most of, like, the exercise and nutrition and all that information that's studied and tested, it's all based off of men's cycle or postmenopausal women. So it's not
because estrogen is not a factor anymore.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not studied or anything for like menstruating women. So the cycle syncing method is, so the 4 phases are your follicular phase, your ovulatory phase, your luteal phase, and then your menstrual phase. And so the U.S. soccer team actually trains based off of the cycle syncing method, which I find is so cool.
Yeah,
and that's why they're like so badass at what they do.
It goes back to rhythms, and I talked about this with in our last episode with Giselle. And I don't know, we've spoken to someone else, but I'm always talking about how everything is in a rhythm, right?
Yeah. So the first phase, it goes back and forth, like kind of what people consider the first phase. Some people consider the menstrual phase the first phase, and some people consider the follicular phase the first phase. But I usually go with the menstrual phase, so that's when your body's like releasing everything, and that's when you want to just slow down and rest. Like rest is the best exercise for your body during this phase, and I always see women like trying to go, and they get so tired. Like, you get super tired. You don't want to socialize. You don't want to see people. And I'm like,
and we're
that
going
is
against it,
okay.
right?
Yes, I'm like, that is okay. You don't have to work out every single day. And I'm like, just trying to get it out there, like schedule your socializing during your ovulatory phase, or which incidentally I am leading up to, so this is a perfect time for this.
We're in sync.
Yes, we're in sync. And so
Same.
Once you're done with your menstrual phase, you go into your follicular phase, and that is actually the best time. So you don't have to eat as much during your follicular phase, and you can work out harder and gain more muscle and lose more fat during that phase. So if you like maximize your workouts in those 2 weeks, because your follicular phase is usually about 7 to 10 days, somewhere in there, and then your ovulatory phase is approximately around 7 days. So if you, and those are the 2 phases where you can work out harder and gain muscle and lose fat much easier.
Follicular and ovulation.
Yes, so
phase.
the 2 phases after you bleed.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, friend.
Let's stop apologizing for it.
You're okay.
You know,
You're okay.
We're
So,
2021
the fact
right at this point, and we need to be open-minded to that, because it's important for all of us to kind of,
yeah,
it's
the
important for men
fact
to
that
be aware
men
of that.
know this,
Is it
like
huge?
any women in your life will truly benefit from this.
Absolutely.
So there's an app called In the Flow. It's a period tracker app, but it has a section where you can sign up your partner to get emails, and it'll tell them what phase you are in, and
How to treat
like
them.
she likes this right now, she would prefer this right now. Like right now, you can go and do the dishes for her, and
Babe,
that will be the
will you
best
download
thing.
this app?
I laugh at this, and I don't mean to. I don't mean to call anybody, or I don't mean in a disrespectful way at all. But like, I work in an office that's all women except one man. More recently, one new man. And I would joke because like there'd be some days where I'd walk in and I'm like, why am I in this mood? And everybody's in the mood. Like everybody's in this like weird mood.
Is
Or
that
we're
a
all
thing?
like,
It can be if they sync
everybody's
up
just
like
like
that.
kind of like I know some of them are like it was always they were all in the same cycle or whatever the case is, but I was like, why am I extra annoyed today? Or I'm like, no, I don't want to.
Because energy's contagious.
Yeah, and my close group of friends also. There's a lot of girls and yeah, I do think it's a thing, but I think it's important though, because regardless of like, in all joking aside, like if by 2021 we're not open-minded to the fact that like we have to be aware of each other and male to female, female to male, and just like each other in general, like knowing
That's
it
so
from
well to do.
knowing it from a like, I've always been a big advocate of women and women's rights and all that and everything. Just knowing, just because it's like we all function together, we all have to work together, and why not? Why do we have to make these things that are nature like we can't avoid
so
it?
like
It's an obstacle. So like don't apologize for it, because it's not. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I
I
just
used to be
wanna
like
be
that too,
so-
and then I'm like, you know what? It's natural, and this is why we have so many problems, because it's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
guys, if you
I'm
have
guilty of that.
if guys have a girlfriend, wife, whatever the fiance, you want to know about this stuff too, because that affects
she
you at
will
home.
appreciate you so much more if
Absolutely.
you know this stuff.
Absolutely, and I think honestly, like you take it for granted because you throw life into everything, right? And that's part of life.
And we're dealing with like life plus our hormones.
Yes, and then you throw in stress at work,
Yeah, and there's
babies, and everything that kind of
All the responsibilities.
all the responsibilities.
Yeah,
like,
and there's
why
so much
wouldn't you?
societal pressure now with like this extra like feminist movement that is
Yeah.
so prevalent, and I feel like it's just there's so much pressure on women to perform at the same level as
as a
the
man.
men in their life, and you don't have to do that. Like you can perform just as well as them, but you don't have to do it every single day like they
Right.
do. If you follow your cycle and you kind of base it off of working with your cycle, I can guarantee your life is going to level up, and you're going to be just as successful as the men in your life, and you don't have to work as hard.
I love that.
That's awesome,
No,
Emily.
it's yeah, and as a male that supports that, I mean, I have no. I right now work under a female leader, and I don't have any issue with that. And it's just a thing. And there's times where I know I may have to step up a little bit, and other times where it's just like, hey, let them do their thing, and that's completely okay. And one of the things where I said I would eventually chime in on this is, and I'll bring it up now, is I think that one, being aware of it from a male perspective, again, whether it's a coworker, whether it's your partner, whether it's your like fiance, girlfriend, whatever the case is, being mindful of what they're going through really just also helps you from a male perspective also know what you're dealing with and being understanding about it. And I don't think we do that enough in general.
Well, because I imagine that as the man, the guy dealing with said female is thinking like, what the hell did I do wrong? And you're just like, I was just asking you if you wanted a cupcake. Why did you have to throw it back at me?
I am so guilty of that, and I try to, like, even me being conscious of what I'm going through, I get really irritated at my boyfriend, and it's like I have to take a step back and be like, I'm sorry, like, it's not me, it's just my hormones right now. It's not actually directed at you. I'm just irritated. So,
But I think like also, one of the things that we mentioned off camera, and I'd like to bring up is, I'm 33 years old, and I made some changes to my life that, physically and professionally, that stress levels are higher. I'm putting in more effort physically, changing my diet. Maybe my body was used to consuming so much or a certain amount, and now I reduced that and I try to incorporate something. So all those things, just like, human, male or female, throws things off. You know what I mean? Or kind of where something was fueling off of, whether it was good or bad, levels were up or down, and if I'm increasing over here and then increasing stress and not balancing things out,
stress
hormones
is like
get out of whack. And one of the things you mentioned was that, or one I've noticed is that nowadays, from a male perspective, we are being a little bit more conscious of, hey, what's my testosterone level at? Is my estrogen level high? And not being able to open that dialogue because it means I'm incompetent, or I can't do this or that, or I'm not going to perform at the gym, or I'm not going to perform in the bedroom, or my estrogen level's high and I'm all of a sudden more feminine. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't work like that. There's a science behind it.
Women have testosterone
Absolutely.
also, and that's actually, I don't know, you may have heard of PCOS, I don't know if you have, but that is a common factor in PCOS, is your testosterone is higher than your estrogen in women. And I'm like, if we can talk about that in women, why can't we talk about estrogen being higher in men? It doesn't make you any less of a man.
Right.
It just means that maybe you need to figure out how to balance things a little better.
And that's where I thought this was such a great topic, especially at the beginning of the year, because from a female perspective, whether you're trying to balance out your cycle and make it less stressful on your body and easier for you to maneuver through and function through, I think also just bringing that awareness, whether you're not giving any specific remedies or solutions, but just being mindful of it and getting, going and asking about that when you get a physical this year, or kind of just seeing where you're at.
Well, and I think also because whenever we think about health, we're thinking about what we're eating and we're thinking about what we're drinking. It's all about consumption. But there are a lot more important things when it comes to health, and that's sleep, that's stress management. You live a very peaceful life from what it seems like.
I try.
And it's very impressive because I just learned that Emily is only 26.
As of last week, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Happy birthday! That's awesome.
We're December babies.
That's right.
So it's really impressive that at such a young age you're already employing some of these habits that I just not stumbled across, but started feeling like they were more important than the other stuff. And so I don't know. I think it's awesome.
I definitely credit that to my mom and my dad for sure. They definitely instilled that in me. So thanks, Mom and Dad.
Shout out to Mom and Dad. The other one question I wanted to ask you is about moon cycles and your period. Is there anything
there is
or
a big connection with your moon cycles and your period?
I'm a girl.
I just made moon water. I made moon water a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that. Like, that's so cool. I just stick my box of crystals outside.
Oh, yeah, you do crystals too.
I do crystals.
Another reason why we magnetize to each other.
Yeah, so most women actually tend to have their period on either the full moon or the new moon. Actually,
a new moon.
yeah, generally your period tends to be better if you're on the new moon. If you're on the full moon, like me, you tend to be a little bit worse. So, but I actually learned something cool the other day, which
That's
is
not your choice, right? Like, just don't.
yeah, it's not my choice. No, it's not.
Okay,
like,
that's just the way it falls,
it's
like
just the way
on
it
the calendar. Or
falls.
whatever
Yes.
the case is. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but
I needed to clarify.
that's what most women tend to lean towards one way or another. Most of them will be about 50-50, half on the new moon, half on the full moon. So,
Wow.
but I heard this like little tidbit, and I actually haven't researched it anymore since I've heard it, but I need to. But apparently, women that have their periods on the full moon are more like the caretakers and the teachers and the like givers of knowledge. And I'm like, okay, that's cool.
More
That's
maternal.
That's what I
instinct.
yeah. That's what I feel like I am. Like I want to
Which is
just, like,
And what about
share
the new
knowledge.
mooners? That's
I
amazing.
didn't hear anything about that. That's why I'm like, I wish I would have researched
Free
that.
spirit,
But probably.
And that's cool. I had never I didn't know that was ever associated.
But I think it's because of the gravitational pulls between
Yeah.
the moon and the sun and the earth and
Yeah,
how
so
water
makes sense.
fluctuates.
Yes, because it's like liquid, it's blood, so it pulls.
Mm-hmm.
Pulls through your body.
That's really intense to hear about it that way. I was like, oh shit. That's
Yeah, like I
that's
said
a novel.
before we started filming, like I'm learning every single day.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And I love that you say that because that's real, and yet you're still developing like your knowledge and your craft and building that audience that you're able to help. And even right now, just being able to start this conversation, the fact that you're here with us, male female duo that are coming, like we're opposites in so many different ways, but at the same time too though, like all this information is so beneficial to both because like I said, whether you go home to your wife, your girlfriend, your mom, your sister, your coworkers, whatever the case is, like if you were just a little bit more understanding
And
or mindful and aware of that can make everybody's night, day, like week a lot more efficient, a lot more, So pay attention, guys.
Yeah,
I'm
this
gonna
is-
reiterate that again. Pay attention here,
Yeah, and the same goes for women. Like
Absolutely. Being
like
mindful
even
of-
though men run on a 24-hour cycle, like be aware of that.
Is there such a thing as a man period?
I am convinced that there is.
Me too.
Same. I'm gonna say yes.
I think, like I said, it runs on a 24-hour cycle, but I think
can you talk about
sometimes.
that? Like, can you give us a little bit more like on your view on that, or like your theory, so to speak, or?
So, I don't know what my particular theory is on that, but I think maybe that has something to do with the moon as well, because it's just like the energy pulse of the way your hormones are going. Like obviously, your clockwork is not going to be the same every single day, and it depends on like how your lifestyle is. Like, did you get enough sleep? Did you eat something that like disagreed with you?
That makes
I
sense,
know
though.
for a
It throws you out of whack.
I know for a lot of men, like not getting enough sleep will like cause the man PMS.
I'm gonna raise my hand to all this stuff, and I told you that before. And unfortunately, and I'll be super completely honest, is that I struggle with that. I struggle recently with like getting consistent hours of sleep for multiple reasons, and I think, like I said, a lot of things have shifted, and then 2020 had its things that kind of shook everything up, and it's been hard for me to balance it out, and that's what I want to do this year in 2021. That's my goal is to. I meant to do that a little bit off camera. Is like I've always kind of utilized this time. I think we always kind of like hold on to the cliche New Year's resolution type of deal. But
I love it though.
I
I think
absolutely do.
there's a time and a place for everything.
A restart.
Resolutions are great at the beginning of a year. Like
I think we've talked about this personally where I come October, like end of October, I notice that I start kind of wrapping things up, like in one form or another, and then we get to where we're cramming it all in December. And I had those weeks, at the end of last year where you knew you had to get everything done in these last 2 weeks, because you weren't going to see anybody till January.
Mhm.
You weren't going to get business done till after the first week in January. You weren't going to do anything. And the lack of sleep, the stress of knowing that you have to get this and that out of the way and done, does play a factor. And you live it, you feel it, and then unfortunately your body reacts to it, and you're trying to function on maybe on 3 cylinders instead of 4, you know what I mean? And I think, just the same for women, when everything that you kind of do really does affect it, because your body's literally, craving that or going through that process. It just makes sense that for some human in the way we function, and I'm not no expert in this at all, but just knowing that like I felt completely off and wanting to utilize this time in 2021 to kind of just focus on things that I didn't before. I wanted to make sure my levels are at par, or at where they need to be.
So if like someone is analyzing all of those things, like CJ, and of course I am too, I'm taking a closer look. What are some things that we should start with?
Yeah.
Where do you start when you're taking care of hormone health?
So there's lots of places that you can start, but I try not to overwhelm people, when I first throw things at them, because people get too overwhelmed and they just like shut off and they don't want to do anything. So as far as hormone health, going back to the sleep, getting enough sleep, like maximizing your sleep, making sure you're getting enough sleep, especially after your ovulatory phase and before your period and during your period. That is what your body wants. Like I said before, it's the best form of exercise. Yes, and give your body, like, it is telling you what it wants. It doesn't want to be out doing things. It doesn't want to be out hustling. It wants to be resting, and that's what it is.
How many hours is sufficient?
So everybody's a little bit different. I know, like, you hear like the 8 hours across the board. For me, I feel the best when I get 7.5 hours. So if you can just kind of
She's so dialed in. 7.5.
Well, no, but I heard that before too. Like, I read it. I was reading a book a while back from Tim Ferriss, and I knew he was functioning on 4 hours, and he was like with the body, for what his lifestyle was, the way he was eating, the way he was working out, and all that stuff. Like, the book's called The 4 Hour Body. Like, he was fully functional and able to do X, Y, and Z. I don't think that that's the case for necessarily everybody.
No, that's like an outlier.
Yeah, like everybody's body functions differently, and
again, it's going to work better for men, most likely, to do that, because, like I said, your cycle is more often the same. And then again, going back to like the man PMS, that's why lack of sleep, like interrupting your schedule, throws you off so much, because your body is so used to that same 24-hour schedule across the board.
And it makes sense from like a female's perspective, though. Like, you throw that off when your body's literally like trying to reset and go through like whatever.
Yeah, you're going in 2 opposite directions.
Doing,
Body's craving this, like craving sleep, and you're trying to push it.
Yeah.
And I know you were giving us some tips right now, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but like even the difference between a woman and a man being on a low-fat diet or a high-fat diet, those things can also are also better for men or women, right? So which is better for a woman?
So for women, I do recommend a high-fat diet, but I know so many women like want to do high-fat and low-carb, but that's not always the best, because your body still needs those carbs. Not necessarily like processed foods, like processed bread or like grains and stuff like that. Yeah, like noodles. But more like those resistant carbs, like a really good grain, like a quinoa or like buckwheat or sweet potatoes are my favorite thing. Like root vegetables like that. And actually, like going back to the cycle syncing, there is foods that are more beneficial to eat during your different phases, and root vegetables and sweet potatoes and things like that. After your ovulatory phase, so during your luteal phase, it actually helps flush out excess estrogen, which is, the estrogen is actually what raises your pain levels. So when you have higher estrogen in your body, you're gonna have probably a more painful period, and
This
that's
is
what I struggle with.
information.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah, so like eating those things
So what foods
every
are
single
those?
day.
Like, what
The root vegetables are the best for
Okay.
flushing out excess estrogen. So eating that in that luteal phase, which is almost 2 weeks, can be very beneficial
So
and a very easy thing to do to lower your pain levels.
So you're in that phase, like sweet potato, quinoa, all those like things are.
I mean, quinoa, not so much as like flushing out the estrogen. It's more like the root vegetables. So like the sweet potatoes, like butternut
Carrots.
squash, carrots. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That is really interesting.
That's just cool.
I just think it's amazing how food is more than just something to fill your belly.
Yeah.
It's actually healing you. It's
or
that's-
fueling you.
it's fuel. It's a healing tool. It's energy. It's everything.
Yeah, and again, like you said, like tips for balancing your hormones, that is a really easy tip that you can do just to include those.
And I'm sure you
before
share like all of this. I know you do.
I talk about it on
social
Instagram.
media.
Let us know where can people find you and get this
So,
information or reach out to you.
I am at Emily Joy Wellness across all platforms: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, website.
I just learned Emily's last name today because I just call her Emily Joy.
Everybody does. Everybody does. It's
and
okay.
you are Joy.
Thanks.
I'm so glad that you joined us today.
Thank you.
What would be your if you want what's the main goal when you want to get the message out to? What's the main message you want to get out to your audience on your platform? Like what's your objective on that perspective?
Your period doesn't have to be something you dread every month. Like it can be a part of your life, without interrupting it. And I just really want to share, like just all the things that you can include. I know that's not just one thing. Like you asked for like my main message.
No,
but I really
that's
my
main.
message is
Yeah.
like everything
It's
all combined into
Obvious,
one.
yeah.
Working
absolutely.
with your body,
Yeah.
not against it.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Using food, using your lifestyle, using like natural things to control your stress. That's really my main message, and that's what I really try to work on.
I really
working
hope we
with
can
people.
help you increase that following because, again, it's just I admire so much that you're so young, so passionate about what you're doing, and it's cool. Like I love when Jenna gets super excited about things. So I'm like, I'm really excited about that too. And I don't have a period, but no, not like again. There's just so much more. There's so much valuable information that I think you can take and really break down, right? And not just hone in on it from one perspective, but it's just like how we all function, or how it affects like if you're gonna go home to your husband and you're in this mood, but you're also being mindful of something, and we're also letting the men know how to maybe be a little bit more mindful.
Yeah,
Like,
and
all
I like
that
always
comes
encourage
full
women
circle.
to like talk to the man in your life. Like don't just
talk
like
about
be
it.
so
walk
shy about
off
it.
and just
Yeah.
be like, I feel this way, but like I don't know why. Like explain to him. And I really encourage like every woman to download a period tracking app and just kind of start tracking your cycles. I love the In the Flow one because it'll kind of give you alerts. Like when you are in a particular phase, it'll send you an alert. So
Like,
you know.
hey, you're moody, and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
it'll
I
tell
am.
you like when you track, like when you change phases, and then you can go into the app and it will have like, how are you feeling? What should I eat? So that's kind of like a really easy. I think it does cost like $2 or something, but it's totally worth it. Yeah, and then you kind of know where you're at. So if you're feeling a certain way, you can be like, look, babe, this is why I'm feeling the way I am. Maybe we can just kind of work on this or do this or not do this. So
Yeah.
Right,
I
that's
like
what-
really encourage them to talk to each other.
Communication is key.
Yes.
And I'm
In all
saying
aspects.
what one of our goals is to start conversation, right? Is to create a place where we start these conversations. And sometimes I know we live in an area that's probably not the topic of conversation in a lot of households. Like, we're just like, hey, it doesn't matter, you were this, you're that, blah blah. But it's important.
Yeah.
It's important. So if we can express that, if we can really just like kind of hone in on that, that would be just a start for everybody, for men and women.
Great.
So I'm excited.
Awesome.
I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes,
I really
thank
like
you
this
for
conversation, for making something that is generally taboo, more spoken about. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I'm looking forward to picking your brain some more.
This was so fun.
I would think it'd be a really great thing to have you back as you evolve and you're trying things that you know, kind of like hone in on and find more information on. It'd be really great to just see where that's evolved for you, what you've noticed in your practice, and how we can spread that message to other women.
Yeah, I know so many more things right now than I did 6 months ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, when you're passionate about something, you're going to be a forever student.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's how I
We're
know I'm
glad
on the
you're
right path. Because when people ask me what I do, I just get like so excited to
Oh,
tell them what I do.
that's
So
awesome.
like that's how I feel.
And that's what we're here for, guys, is to share people's journeys, especially when they're passionate about something and they're lending information that's helpful for our community. And you know,
Just in general.
we can be a platform to share all of that. So thank you for joining us. If you haven't followed us on all of our platforms, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Living the Journey RGB, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.